Thank you very much, Maria. Cedric, I think both you and I had the same reaction when we heard those predictions.
See this face?
Both a little bit like, what?
You see this face?
I see it.
Bright, early.
I agree with it.
It's good to go.
Yep.
You're really going to pick against Seth Manfield, huh? All three of you?
Oh, you poor souls.
He's won 17. He's 17-0 in his last 17 high-level competitive matches. Speaking of the number 17, just because for funsies, 17 Grand Prix top 8s, 1 Pro Tour Ixalan in 2017, world champion, won the Mythic Invitational last year, which was historic, which is the format we're about to play. This is no disrespect to Logan Nettles, who is fantastic. Jabberwocky on Magic Online, you get paired against him. Why waste your time? Just right-click, concede, move on to the next match. But this is Seth Manfield we're talking about here, people. The 3-0 clean sweep picking against him. I'm a little dubious early this morning. That's all I'm saying.
I am right there with you, Cedric, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I picked Seth Manfield to top 8 this tournament. So, you know, I'm kind of trying to beat the rest of the commentary team here. So go, Seth Manfield, go! But let's be unbiased for this matchup and get things underway with a Roger and Triome apiece for both players. Taking a look at the opening hands, both pretty good looking, and yeah, both players going to get started with what they want to do in their game plan.
This should be a good, healthy back and forth between these two players. This is, you know, Steam Vents Mania here, as we are very much used to here in the historic format, with so many Steam Vents being registered. Second most played card in historic this particular weekend. Now, there are a couple different ways to go about Steam Venting, as we know. Izzet Phoenix is one, Jeskai Control is another, and as Mani, excuse me, Jeskai Turns is the third, and arguably, we'll have to find out over the course of this weekend, the best way to go about Steam Ventings here this weekend.
We'll just have to see how the wins play out at the end of this tournament, but for now, we're going to focus on these two Jeskai iterations here. Jeskai Turns and Jeskai Control. Jeskai Control not as well represented, I'd say, this weekend as we've seen previously. Izzet Phoenix certainly took over, and this Jeskai Turns deck is, like Moni said, the new hotness, as it were.
Yeah, it's really just kind of a big question about, for the Jeskai Control deck that Seth is playing, is how good are you against the opposing Jeskai decks? How good are you against the card Arc Light Phoenix, which everyone knew was going to be popular here this weekend and has shown up in spades? And how good are you against this turn deck once it has Velomachus on the battlefield, and once it's doing its thing with Time Warp? You know, are you able to compete with that? We're going to find out. I mean, this is a beautiful test case, right? Both our players are 7-0. They're both phenomenal Magic players, and so now we're going to get a really good handle on it, on who kind of wins this matchup. Small sample, yes, but when you take into account how skilled both players are, you can't ignore what we're going to be seeing here as far as the result is concerned.
Expressive Iteration finding a second Roger and Triome with the top of the library, so get that down. If there's anything that Logan Nettles wants to do this turn, he has a small opportunity to do so, but unfortunately can't Indomitable Creativity just yet, but does have that treasure down courtesy of Magma Opus.
Yeah, not a ton going on right now. Logan's hand has a Brainstorm, a Time Warp, Fire Prophecy. Not going to have a ton of stuff to kill with that particular card. Velomachus, Lorehold, which is a very powerful card in the deck and is a huge part of what this deck is trying to accomplish, but not the best served to have in your hand. So we might see him Brainstorm and shuffle that one away at some point. For Seth, there was maybe a little bit of concern as far as mana and being able to hit his land drops, and with a control deck, that's incredibly important, as we know, but less of a concern now as he's found a couple of different lands to play, has a Fabled Passage next turn, could cycle a Shark Typhoon as well. So life is pretty good here for both players as far as land drops are concerned, and at some point we'll start to see a whole bunch of flurry of spells be cast, and we'll see how the chips and the cards do fall.
Both players just getting themselves set up with the mana, making sure that they're not the person to blink first, but using the end steps and brainstorming here as Logan Nettles takes a look at the cards drawn. Velomachus Lorehold, certainly not something you want in your hand, as that's what you aim to fetch with Indomitable Creativity. So what do we send back here?
A tough question, but I gotta answer it. It's my job. Velomachus Lorehold, excuse me, seems like an ideal place to start, but it's tough too, because now that you found a copy of Prismari Command, there's some drawing and discarding that can be involved with that particular card. I'm leaning towards one of these removal spells, either Prophecy or Scorching Dragonfire, and then Velomachus Lorehold. I think Prophecy is worse than Scorching Dragonfire, but it looks like we're going to want to put both of those cards back and then just shuffle away. So the removal spells are going to have to come back another day.
One thing that I found interesting about Logan Nettles' deck is that he's only running the 2 copies of Velomachus Lorehold, whereas we've seen the full 4 copies in some other versions of the deck. So not all in on that combo. What do you make of that?
Well, it's nice to be able to split the difference as best you can, because depending on what you're expecting for the format, you can play 4 of them, or you can kind of mix it up a little bit. And obviously Logan's decided to mix it up a little by having some copies of that card, but not relying on it too much, which means that your deck has a little more flexibility in what it can accomplish. You still do have the Mizzix Masteries, you still do have the Indomitable Creativities, but not fully loading up on Velomachus like some other players are this weekend.
Passing the turn back. On the end step, we're going to make a Shark token here for Seth Manfield, and Prismari Command will be able to take care of that if Logan Nettles feels the need to. Steam Vents off the top, as well as a Lightning Helix. Little Shark is going to get in for 2 points damage, taking Logan down to 18. Will we see a follow-up play here, or are we just happy to pass the turn back?
Yeah, I'm curious if Seth, when he wants to attempt to try to land Narset, because Narset is such a powerful card in these blue mirrors. It's great against, I mean, I'm gonna unwind really quickly here. If you are going to be playing in a Steam Vents based format like we are right now, this is probably the best Planeswalker to have in the format for that kind of setup, where there's going to be so many Brainstorms cast, so many Faithless Lootings cast, all that stuff that we're used to seeing over the course of day 1, and now as we're working ourselves here into day number 2. Narset plays more as an enchantment in this metagame. Like, there will be games where Seth will just play a Narset and not even activate it for fear of it dying. Now, I don't know if that will be taking place this game. We'll see at least one activation. Don't know if we'll see a second one, but Narset is immensely powerful in this metagame, Ailey.
It certainly is. I've just sat on the other side of a Narset with my Phoenix deck and cried a little bit, because she just shuts it down entirely. Unless you have a hasty threat to take care of her immediately, sometimes that's not even enough, because some of the best players in the world, like you mentioned, just leave it on the battlefield as a 5 devotion or 5 loyalty planeswalker that is just stopping you from activating your game plan. But here we did see the activation from Narset, did find a spare Narset, so Logan knows exactly how many Narset he has to kill at this point. But take a look at the hand there. We have Teferi as well. We've got Gideon here, Gideon of the Trials, and we also have a counterspell in Memory Lapse. So Logan may think, okay, maybe this is the turn I can try and deploy Indomitable Creativity, but with 2 mana up, you gotta know better than that.
Yeah, there's just not a ton going on right now in Logan's hand. This Prismari command, is going to be dealing 2 damage over to the Narset and generating a treasure token. So that's going to allow that to resolve. Velomachus, the second copy in Logan's main deck, is the draw here as well. So we might see him try to go for the big dragon, but we all see the Memory Lapse that's hanging out in Seth's hand. So that is going to be an unsuccessful attempt if Nettles attempts to go that way.
I can understand the logic behind only playing the 2 copies of Velomachus Lorehold, but when the dragon disagrees with you and is like, listen here, I'm going to be in your hand now, and there's nothing you can do about it at this point, it's kind of a feels bad, because now there's no other targets to hit with that. So where do we look next? Are we going to go for a Time Warp here? What would you do?
Yeah, this is difficult, because now, in order to get that card back in your deck, it involves Brainstorm, of course. And you see Logan is kind of shaking his head here, because his draw has not come together particularly well this game, and Narset continues to just kind of be a thorn in his side. Now, Logan might feel as though, I don't really have any better options. I just have to hope that this dragon can resolve. Or perhaps we're going to play, an extremely, extremely expensive Explore here in Time Warp, which is going to allow Logan to take another turn, and more importantly for him, because his hand's not very good, just take another draw step. So there are ways in Brainstorm to get the Velomachus back into your deck, so it's not the end-all be-all that you've drawn both copies, but it's not great for Logan right now, I'll say that.
No, it's not, especially with no other way to deal with Narset at this time. So hoping to find a burn spell of sorts, perhaps another Prismari command off the top of the library, so that he can start doing things again. Let's see what he's got. Triome.
Yeah, again, not great. I mean, you're seeing part of the deck building cost with a strategy like this, which is, we think of the ceiling of what this deck can do, right? You Indomitable Creativity, Velomachus onto the battlefield, you hit Time Warps, and look at you, you're just doing your thing. We saw Kai do it yesterday, right? Just living the dream. And then there's other times where you draw Indomitable Creativity and it's not particularly good. You've drawn your copies of Velomachus, not great. Your Time Warps are very expensive Explorers where you're just drawing a card for your next turn. So, we do see some of the downside that comes with playing this deck. We're seeing kind of the floor of it right now, but we've also seen the ceiling too, Ailey, and that's why this deck is so attractive.
Oh, when it gets going, it's a thing of beauty, that's for sure. Oh, rest in peace. I thought maybe Logan's next plan is to just try and get to an overloaded Mizzix Mastery, but now with rest in peace off the top of the library there, I think Seth's going to ruin any plans of that.
Yeah, just a singleton rest in peace in Seth's deck list here this weekend. Gonna be some spots where it's quite good. Gonna be some spots, truthfully, where it's quite bad. But when you come into an event knowing that Izzet Phoenix is gonna be one of the most played decks, it's worth probably the risk reward factor of playing one main deck copy of Rest in Peace, especially when you have access to a card like Brainstorm. Most likely gonna be worth it.
You're going to see another activation on the new Narset, finds Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, as well as Wrath of God. So Seth Manfield doesn't have any way to counteract whatever might come down next. He doesn't know about the second Velomachus Lorehold. So will we see Rest in Peace here? Or will he go for the bluff, do you think?
Yeah, tough to say right now, because one thing, because we are in an open decklist tournament, you got to remember that players have access and know exactly what each other have. So Seth is a deck that doesn't have a ton of counter magic, as you see the Rest in Peace get deployed. And Logan knows that, so Logan is, a little reaffirming head nod here. Is now here comes Velomachus, and Seth wouldn't have tapped out if he had some sort of counter spell for it. So Logan's gonna go for this, gonna get Narset off the battlefield, and let's see how the trigger goes.
All right, Velomachus, what do you find at the top there? Are we taking some extra turns? Oh, Scorching Dragonfire, beautiful. So that's a good way to clear that blocker out of the way and clear the Narset off the board.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, obviously there's a higher ceiling hits there, but with regards to getting Narset off the battlefield, clearing the blocker out of the way, and actually having something to do on the battlefield, not bad. Unfortunately here for Logan, Seth does have an answer, actually multiple, if we're being honest here, in Wrath of God and Teferi with the old Tuckaroo, but not a bad exchange there for Logan, because this game is not going great for him.
Yeah, no, it's kind of at the point now where you got to just deal with one problem at a time, and Seth Manfield is presenting many of them. He's got a whole handful of problems. One of them is known to Logan, which is the Wrath of God. So it's going to be interesting to see how Seth Manfield decides to deal with this powerful dragon.
Seth with access, to 6 mana this turn. Looks like he's just going to go the old school route of just casting Wrath of God to take care of a creature. Been seeing that for, 20 plus years of Magic's history, so kind of cool to see that again here in 2021.
Alright, so Prismari Command is the draw. We have a Velomachus Lorehold in hand, so that's going to be deployed once again. This is the only other copy, and Seth Manfield will know that. So this taking turns plan with Velomachus is going to be put to a stop very, very shortly.
Now remember, 2 Time Warps in the graveyard. There are some nice hits here for Logan. Though the facial reaction, I mean, he doesn't normally give very much away anyway. If we can get a look at his side, that'd be fantastic. Hopefully we can. But 2 Time Warps in the graveyard, and now you're seeing Brainstorms and Expressive Iteration are the cards that have been hit here. So no Mizzix Mastery, no additional Time Warp, nothing like that. Again, the ceiling on this card is extremely high. The floor isn't bad either. I mean, look, Brainstorm is Brainstorm. It's the most played card in this tournament, so it's not like that's bad either. But, he was hoping for much more.
A bit of a tricky decision here because he's got, 2 cards in hand, so Brainstorm can get rid of something. Yeah, I want to go for the Expressive Iteration here. And
we can't forget, too, that this Rest in Peace is in play and on the battlefield, so Logan not having access to his graveyard means that the hits as far as the ceiling is concerned on the Velomachus, actually not as high as he'd like for it to be, because Mizzix Mastery has now worked itself out of the equation.
Yeah. So no more graveyard shenanigans or overloading for 8. But does find a Memory Lapse, which will be useful to fight against this hand of Seth Manfield. I mean, if you had to look at these 2 hands, I would go, oh yeah, 100%, Seth Manfield's got this in the bag. So finding that Memory Lapse might just give him a little bit of a window to fight his way back into this one.
Yeah, Memory Lapse is a card that buys time, and so it might buy Logan enough time to be able to chain through a win here. It's entirely possible.
Whenever I see Teferi, Narset, and Gideon, I'm just like, that is one uphill battle to climb here. Goodness me. So several options here. I know the one thing I want to see, and I think everyone always wants to see, is a hard cost Shark Typhoon, but now is not the time for that. Instead, we're going to go for double Lightning Helix, it seems.
We're going to wait till Marshall gets in the booth for that nonsense, since it brings him so much joy, and he got his wish yesterday and getting the opportunity to see that happen. Double Helix here, gonna fail because of this lapse.
Nice, okay. So Velomachus lives another turn.
Trying to ride that there dragon to victory.
Yeah. So no follow-up here, though, for Seth Manfield, so... Oh, okay. Okay.
Have the necessary mana.
All right, that's one way to get the job done here. Magma Opus a couple times. We got some more Burn and Prismari Command. How much damage is that? 11? Down to 5? Over several turns. Obviously, we can't do Magma Opus and Prismari Command at the same time.
Yeah. So, let's take a look at the top 7 cards again. There
goody.
we go. There we go. There's the Time Warp that you Time Warp fans have been looking for. I'm talking to you, Monty DeVuti.
Oh, he's probably got lethal here then with that extra turn.
Yeah, you
4
get that
damage to face.
Yeah, you get that extra turn. You play that Opus.
Yeah.
You're probably just clear for takeoff. So again, what's kind of interesting about this is we're going to see a Magma Opus resolve. Is I would say that this was like one of the bottom ends of Logan's draw. As far as like his draw just wasn't all that great, right? Like no Indomitable Creativity nonsense, no Mystics Mastery nonsense, like none of the things that you're used to seeing. You know, not even any crazy chaining of Velomachus Time Warp type stuff, right? But he was still able to get the job done. So if you are rooting for Logan and you're rooting for Jeskai turns, you're probably thinking to yourself right now, his draw wasn't even particularly good or explosive and he was able to get the job done. Now, if you're rooting for number 17, Seth Manfield, Mr. 17 wins in a row, you might be thinking, well, his deck does get better after sideboard. And of course, I'm talking about Seth. So there's some back and forth here. But if you're Logan, you got to be pretty thrilled with that because you didn't draw it particularly well and we're still able to eke out the W there.
Yeah. Very, very fortunate draws there for Logan Nettles to get that victory pretty convincingly in the end there. That dragon just getting the job done. And you say that Seth's deck gets better after sideboard. I've got to say that Logan's does too against this matchup. You know, we got uncountable fries. We got Nezahal, the Primal Tide. Take out all of the combo nonsense. Velomachus out. We've got Time Warps coming out. And just a bunch of counter spells and Shark Typhoons.
Yeah, like both decks do get better. You're seeing the cards that are coming in and out there for both players. Both players, you know, bringing in those mystical disputes, as you mentioned, those fries, all other stuff. So both decks are getting appreciably better after sideboard. I'm honestly a little surprised that Logan was able to get that one, just insofar as his draw was just not the explosiveness that you expect from his strategy, but he was able to play, dare I say, a fair game.
Yeah.
And win it that way. I don't know how fair Velomachus is, but given what his deck's ceiling is, he was able to play a pretty honest and fair game of Magic and get the job done. So kudos to him and whatever kind of coffee he's drinking this morning. He's putting that stuff down.
Free spells are always fair. Who doesn't love free spells? Alrighty, let's get game number 2 here. Seth Manfield is going to be on the play. Has a look at a hand that he quite likes. Expressive Iteration, Prismari Command, and a Shark Typhoon at his disposal. On the other side of things, Brainstorm, Miscast, and Memory Lapse, as well as that mighty Nezahal Primal Tide in hand.
Some Triome action to start. We're used to seeing these explosive iterations here from both players. Going to see a lot more counter magic here from both players after sideboard as well. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying for position. But one thing to keep your eyes on in the early stages of this game, just like the last one, is just land drops for both players. Very important that they hit them. You don't want to be out mana'd, so when it comes time to have kind of a fight over something, you don't have enough mana to play multiple spells in one turn. So keep your eye on the land drops for the first 4 or 5 turns of this game.
So no Expressive Iteration on turn 2 there. Going to hold up that Prismari Command. It looks like here for Seth. Logan just deciding if he wants to Brainstorm now or later, because he would ideally like to get Nezahal back into his library. I'm just going to dump another Triome down. Still no play just yet.
Yeah, we're just slow and steady.
So 2 Indomitable Creativities. We do have... And we don't have a way to make a treasure just yet. But Seth Manfield is going to draw 2, discard, and then make his own treasure token. I must say, I've been very impressed with Prismari Command. It's just really also shaken up Historic so much. You see Jund become less popular because they have main deck artifact hate now in Prismari Command.
Yeah, it's an incredible, incredible Magic card. Just the modality of that card, I mean, good enough right now to counter via Miscast, even though it's unclear what that Prismari Command was even going to accomplish. But that card is so powerful that Logan said, I'd rather you don't resolve that, thank you very much. But it's a huge game changer across multiple constructed formats, and we have certainly seen its impact in Historic already.
The card that's made waves certainly is Expressive Iteration, as it goes looking on the top of the library here, sees Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, a second Expressive Iteration, and a Glacial Fortress.
Well, Big T is always a tough one to pass up. Card's so powerful once it gets onto the battlefield. The big question is, can you actually get it onto the battlefield? Last game, Seth could not. This game, he may be able to. It's always a goal of his strategy. Arguably the best card in his deck for this particular weekend. We'll have to find out if he can actually get that card resolved, however. Remember the last game, too, Ailey. He was able to resolve a Narset, but Logan was able to work himself through a couple of those and go on to win that game. So as good as Narset is in this deck and in this style of matchup, it can be beat. Maybe a little bit harder to do as far as Teferi is concerned.
Teferi is certainly a bigger thorn in the side. Narset shuts down the draw, but Teferi can just do such a good job of protecting himself and getting rid of permanents on the battlefield. Expressive Iteration here from Logan Nettles is going to take a look at the two cards that he's put back there from Brainstorm. See where he wants to go with them.
We do see the Dwarven Mine. That, of course, makes a token for Indomitable Creativity, so it's kind of baked into the deck. So a little bit of optionality here for Logan. Remember, he already has Indomitable Creativity in his hand, so looks like he's going to take the Mine, make a little bozo.
Commence the endgame, one of the powerful sideboard cards here for Seth, uncounterable. So we're going to go for Narset Partra Veils on the battlefield here, but Logan Nettles is going to say no, thank you, not yet.
Yeah, Seth really struggling along here. His hands have not really come together all that well. Remember, he doesn't have a ton of counter magic in his deck, but he has more than he's let on. Dovin's Veto, Memory Lapse, 3 copies each in his main deck here this weekend. We've talked about those mystical disputes that are hiding out in the sideboard, which, you know, basically every player who's playing blue has access to this weekend as well. So you do wonder if Logan's going to make any moves as far as going for it is concerned.
Yeah, I'm curious what the play here is going to be, if he's just quite happy to sit back and let things happen, just try and get the job done with these 2 1/1s. I don't think he's got any other targets for Indomitable Creativity right now, besides Nezahal in the deck.
Well, one of the nice things about these 1/1s that Dwarven Mine makes, right? They seem kind of innocuous, and they're part of the combo, in quotes, with Indomitable Creativity. But don't ignore the fact that these 1/1s actually do a nice job of pressuring Planeswalkers. So, as an example, Narset were to come down in this battlefield, maybe Seth minuses it and brings it down to 3 loyalty counters. Then Logan brings it down to 1 loyalty counter, which means Narset can't be activated again. And then these 1/1s can pick off the Narset. So, even though they're not the most powerful of cards in the world, they do actually matter when an opponent is based around using Planeswalkers to win the game.
Yeah. Seth does have commenced the endgame to protect the Planeswalkers if needs be. I'm wondering if he's gonna fire one off here, or if he's gonna go for the Shark Typhoon.
Well, I think he's gonna commence on the end step. Not gonna do it in combat, of course. Wants to keep up the appearances as though he has some good things going on in his hand, which we know he doesn't, but Logan doesn't know that. Doesn't mean Logan can't make a play like this one, because, well, this thing can't be countered.
Nope.
So, you know, there is that. What's been interesting about these couple of games that we've watched here, right, is you expect this Jeskai turn deck, given the name of the deck, to be this Velomachus Lorehold, time warping, Indomitable Creativity machine. Not to hard cast 7 mana spells, but that's where we are.
Yeah, if it's not in the deck, I'm just going to hardcast it, which is kind of funny, because if Seth goes for Teferi, tuck that away, it can obviously exile itself to protect itself, but if that wasn't the case, then Teferi could send it away to the deck, and then, oops, Indomitable Creativity, it's back again.
Yep. So now we've got Nezahal on the battlefield, and this is something Seth really has to contend to. That gigantic blue monster has a lot of text on it, so...
Oh, yeah.
And this is always one of my favorite things about Magic is, you know, you go deep through the card pool to find the right card for the right matchup, and if you are right about that and have identified that and players aren't ready for it, you get paid off in spades. Now, I'm not saying that Seth isn't ready for this type of card. It's Seth Manfield, folks. He's ready for kind of everything, but it doesn't mean that it isn't the right card for the matchup. It certainly appears as though it is. That thing is extremely powerful. It's going to go away for now, as you mentioned, but it could come back at any moment because of Indomitable Creativity.
Yeah. No interaction from Seth Manfield in terms of counterspells, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Logan just let this be. Like, yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, that kind of just goes away, right? And this also brings into the equation what I mentioned a couple turn cycles ago, which is these little dwarven mind bozos that can now, because Teferi's down to 1 loyalty, maybe you can finish that thing off now. Teferi's so powerful, of course, on the battlefield when it starts drawing cards and untapping lands and doing its thing. And it looks like we're actually going to see the discarding of 3 cards to bring Nezahal back to the grip. But the ability to actually finish off Teferi here appears to be pretty nice here for Logan.
Yeah, and I was just having a look at the list of Seth Manfield. If Indomitable Creativity was used on that 6/6, I don't think there's any valid targets for Seth Manfield to hit.
Oh, that's pretty adorable.
So it would just be a free removal spell on that 6/6. I mean, it's not necessary in this instance, as the one of the 1/1s will get through.
Yeah, sometimes you forget that you can turn creativity the other way.
Yeah. I've just seen it used to cheat out massive things on the other side of the battlefield. Meanwhile, it could hit anything.
Yeah.
All right, so here we're going to see an attack with the 2 little dwarves going towards Teferi, and Nezahal doesn't care for this powerful planeswalker, going straight to face to take Seth Manfield down to 7.
And excuse me for misspeaking last turn. Nezahal actually back on the battlefield, not back to the hand with the activated ability. So the cost there is pretty steep, having to discard a couple of cards, but appears to be worth it in the end, as the Primal Tide is coming on in alongside a couple of 1/1s.
I wonder if there's any interest here for Seth to block Nezahal and then try go for the Fry. But there's so much mana open. You got to think that Logan's got something.
Yeah, we're gonna see Seth in the old tank here. Looks like we're gonna start off with the Fry.
I mean, can't be counted either, so that's okay.
Yeah, maybe you start with the Fry before blocks and then tender your blocks, as opposed to blocking first and then frying. Maybe that's what we're seeing here.
I'm gonna draw another card here.
Yeah.
Courtesy of Nezahal. Wait, but memory lapse? No. What am I thinking of that puts spells on top of the... Doesn't counter them, just puts on top of the library.
Yeah, this is one of those times where lapse is actually... So there's sometimes some weird counterplay, right, with cards that are uncounterable, and then there are counter spells that can kind of do something. Like if you think of a card like...
Commit to memory.
I'm thinking commit mostly at this point, but we've seen some blue counter spells that kind of bounce a card back to your hand. Think like a card like Venser Shaper Savant, something like that. This is not one of those interactions, if memory serves, with memory lapse versus Fry. We're going to see a brainstorm in response, though. Yeah, Ether Gust is a more current 2021 example. Got to play to my audience here since I'm 100 years old.
Please. All right, what did we find? Anything useful here for Logan? Doesn't look like it, so... Does have the ability, though, to put Nezahal into exile again by discarding some cards.
Yeah, we got to put 2 back first. Got a Fabled Passage, of course, to make it a, quote, perfect brainstorm, unquote, for you Legacy fans out there. But this is step 1 here for Logan, is figuring out what cards he wants to put back. You're seeing some judicious use of the clock here from Nettles, but if you've ever watched him play when he does streaming or just Magic Online in general, you know that he's a very methodical, and thoughtful player, Nassif-esque, if you will, and just taking his time. But taking his time thus far has led to 7 wins and 0 losses, so I'd say it's worth it.
Yep, indeed it is. No rush. We're here to watch great Magic players do their things, so... Blocks finally tendered here. The 6/6. Is this worth getting off the battlefield for Logan Nettles? Is it worth losing Nezahal Primal Tide over? Let's see what he decides to do. Looks like we're going for the discard. Nezahal's going to get exiled and come back once again. Leaving just Shark Typhoon in hand. There goes Teferi. Oh, please hard cast it.
Well, I've been thinking about it a little bit on if that's something that's under consideration here for Seth, because I don't think it's impossible that we see him do this. Now, of course, we all know the power of cycling Shark Typhoon, and so if we count Seth's lands for 8, it can be a 6/6 right now. So what we could see is cycle Shark Typhoon for a 6/6, double block Nezahal.
Yep.
go that route, because Logan is kind of out of gas as far as cards are concerned. He's had to discard 6 this game.
Yeah.
So, there is that. So we could see the double block. I don't think that hardcasting Shark Typhoon is out of the equation, but we're certainly not going to see it this go around.
Logan getting back those 2 counterspells he put on top of the library thanks to Brainstorm, so he'll be able to protect against the revealed Narset. Won't be able to do much against this big old shark, though.
Yeah, and this isn't a bad spot for Seth to be here. Back-to-back Shark Typhoons are actually pretty darn nice. And when you're looking at Logan, who has a hand of memory lapses, plural, at this exact moment, Seth doesn't really need to cast any spells right now to kind of go about winning this game. We could see him just, again, cycle another Shark Typhoon after playing a Sacred Foundry on tap. But I like step 1 here of just, like, let me get in with this Shark, bring you down to 12. Again, I'm curious to see what he's going to do with the Foundry. Question answered. Willing to pay 2 life to make a bigger shark token. And his sharks are out dueling Logan sharks right now. So it's what is it, Shark Week? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it sure seems like it. I bet the Discovery Channel's never seen a flying shark, though.
They're lost.
And here comes Nezahal, just swinging in on its own a second Shark Typhoon in hand here for Seth, so would be able to do the double block that you mentioned, forcing a discard of all 3 cards in hand for Logan if he wants to keep it alive.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of the interesting thing. And right now, he could also just make Shark Typhoon. He can make this one a 7/7, so he can just say single block. Could also tender double block if there's a reason that we're not thinking of, but he could just say, hey, single block 7/7 on 7/7. Do you want to lose your thing or not? Like, it's your decision at this point. And I think Logan would probably let his Nezahal go at that point. But Seth might also have interest in just saying, all right, I'll take it. I've got some life to work with. I'll fall down to 6, which is what he's going to do. Cycle the Shark Typhoon and try to win the game that way. But there is some risk that is associated with that play. So we're going to see how this goes here for both players.
Well, one thing I do love about the inclusion of Shark Typhoon in Magic is that it does get games over a fair bit quicker in the controlled decks than just watching Teferi tuck everything and then force you to exile stuff. So I'm all for these sharks, if I'm honest.
I am also a fan. This card for me is a flavor win among so many other things. So here is the double block. 4/4 and a 3/3 on a 6/6. So naturally going to kill the 4/4. One nice thing here for Seth, however, is that now for Logan, the shields are down as far as mana is concerned. So Seth, resolve whatever you want to in the second main phase, my friend.
Yeah, just keep an eye on that life total, though. Both players scarily low now. Logan down to 5, Seth Manfield down to 6. So what are we going to do here? Expressive Iteration does similar things to Narset in terms of finding cards on the top of the library. Narset is able to go digging and stop any draw that Logan may have.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating on where do you want to start. Do you want to start with Iteration? Do you want to start with Narset? Do you just want to get Kahira and play that as a blocker? Remember, the non-creature spells that are cast is going to allow Logan to draw a card. That's a little bit scary because he is a Time Warp deck. And we're kind of doing this back and forth racing type thing. So I'm sure Logan would love to go attack you with all my stuff. Seth, tenders blocks. Things fall out the way they do. And so take another turn, do it again. That'll give Logan a pretty big advantage. So I think it's in play that Seth just goes, get Kahira, play that, pass. Because you don't draw a card off of that. Now, Seth doesn't know what's in Logan's hand. We all do here at home, which is a bunch of memory lapses, which aren't particularly good. But I'm not too surprised to see this be Seth's only play.
Okay.
That might be scary.
Yeah, that can kill things. And I don't think Seth has anything to hit with. Oh boy. Has he got enough to pay for Mystical Dispute?
Well, he can just the war would be he just lapses it, right? He go creativity, Seth disputes it, and then Logan lapses it. I'm curious to see how creative Logan gets with this card right now.
10 out of 10 pun.
Thank you. I'm a regular Luis Scott Vargas.
Alrighty, we're gonna go for it here. It seems Indomitable Creativity. Are we targeting Seth's creatures? Going for the 7/7. Interesting. Oh man, if one of those lapses was a land, that would have been
it'd be kind of sick.
He's not dead, though. But wants to keep this alive.
Yeah, so a couple of things to note here. Mystical Dispute, trigger, draw a card. Okay, I can beat your dispute with this lapse, right? So, you know, having this kind of work, Logan's fine with. Drew an awesome card off the Nezahal too. We can't forget about that. And now, I mean, Seth is in some serious trouble.
I think our vehement backing of Seth Manfield is also in a little bit of trouble here, friend.
Never give up.
Never give up.
Never surrender.
Oh, goodness me. This aquatic beatdown here from Logan Nettles is surely something. And this 3-3, knowing that there's no flyer coming on in the next turn, is happily going to get in there. And there's a Teferi.
Never give up. Never surrender, Ailey. The best part of Magic, drawing a card.
Yes.
Seth, I think, may have just drawn a pretty good one.
You know, it's a fine Magic card. It's just shaped a meta for I don't know how many years.
Now, again, let's not forget that every non-creature spell that Seth plays is going to net Logan a card. So I mentioned drawing a card, the best part of Magic. Logan's going to get to see quite a few of them too. So here's one.
Is there any consideration to get Narset down first? Considering?
That's a fair. That's not a bad draw either. That's a fair question that you just asked. That actually, Commence might be a better find than Commence might be a better find than Teferi. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can play Teferi. Seth has not played a land yet.
That land hurts. I don't think he wants to punch himself in the face if he wants to use it.
I think I agree. So let's see. We get rid of the shark. We say bye-bye, Sharky. Okay. Got 2 mana available. Steam Vent's probably just going to ETB tapped. Yeah, you just got ETB tap this because you bring yourself down to 1. You're just going to get killed by the Dwarven Mind tokens. So, all right.
Oh, that is a bluff if ever I've seen one. Oh, gross! Prismari, come on, can just go 2 to the face.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good draw.
Ooh, okay.
Reminder, best part of Magic is drawing a card.
Oh, yes. And look how many, though, that Logan drew off of Nezahal. I kind of wish Narset was down. Oof. Now, does Logan think that Seth Manfield has a counterspell?
Yeah. Remember, Seth has access to a lot of counterspells in his 75 cards. Most notably, Seth has 3 main deck copies of Dovin's Veto that have not shown up.
I haven't seen them, yeah.
Yeah, have not shown up at all. 2 cards are a mystery right now in Seth's hand. Narset is known information.
If it is a mystical dispute, then you can pay for it. So I think we're going to go for the Prismari Command straight to face. And then swinging for the win here for Logan.
Well, old Nugglesworth, right to the dome. So this brings him down to 1.
Yep.
And
I'm just
then
gonna swing all Sweet Chariot.
It's those Dwarven Mind tokens, folks. They're not irrelevant. They do matter.
Hi-ho, hi-ho. It's off to work we go. And they certainly got the job done there for Logan Nettles, picking up the victory against Seth Manfield. Good game, sir. The Jabberwocky victorious.
Just like you and I predicted, Logan Nettles winning this match over Seth Manfield 2-0.
Commentator's curse. Sorry, Seth. Blame us.
So I don't know if you just caught this too, by the way, which I did just catch. This is actually pretty great.